So, remember when President Trump offered to buy Greenland? I mean, it just exploded everywhere. Some people laughed it off, others called it a stroke of geopolitical genius, a brilliant play against China and Russia. It kicked off this massive storm of analysis. Today, we're going to open the file on that whole theory. We are conducting a full strategic audit to separate the actual mission from the, let's say, interesting manners. So, let's get into it. And this right here is the big question, isn't it? Was this some kind of calculated 4D chess move by a master strategist, like some really sharp analysts have argued? Or was it something else? To really get to the bottom of this, we need a specific tool, a concept that helps us cut through all the noise.
And that concept is called sanewashing. Now, take a look at this. It's when you have a chaotic, maybe impulsive action at the top, like, hey, we're buying Greenland, and then experts and analysts come along and try to fit it into a nice, rational box. What you end up with is this clean, logical justification, like, oh, it's 4D chess, or it's all about treaty leverage. Our audit today is all about peeling back that sanewashing to see what was really going on underneath.
Okay, so this is absolutely the heart of the matter. There's a huge difference between the what and the how. The strategy, the what, is totally legit. I mean, securing the Arctic, closing missile gaps, getting access to critical minerals, yeah, those are all vital American interests, no question. But the leadership, the how, that was a whole other ballgame. You know, treating a key ally like a piece of real estate and using the language of dominance instead of diplomacy. You can 100% support the mission without supporting the hostile takeover method.
All right, so let's put on our auditor hats. We're about to break down all those common justifications that were used to sanity wash this offer. We're going to go exhibit by exhibit and see if they actually hold up to scrutiny.
First up, Exhibit A, the access myth. The whole story was that the U.S. needed to strong-arm Denmark to get access to the Arctic. But here's what the audit finds. The U.S. already has access. It has Thule Air Base, its northernmost military base, sitting right there in Greenland. And the 1951 Defense Agreement guarantees its security. So the logic just doesn't track. Why would you need to buy something you already have guaranteed access to by treaty? It just doesn't make any sense.
And that brings us to Exhibit B. This is where you realize this wasn't some kind of clever metaphor for leverage. It was a literal, real estate mindset. For a leader who thinks in terms of assets and deals, buying isn't just one option. It's the only option. In that worldview, nations aren't partners. They're basically just distressed assets that you can flip for a profit or for bragging rights.
Now, Exhibit C, this is where the whole 4D chess against Russia argument really hits a wall. The theory says this was all about containing Russia, but that strategy completely falls apart when the commander-in-chief himself is calling Putin savvy and a genius. It's an impossible contradiction. You just can't run a contain Russia play if the person calling the shots thinks the other team's quarterback is his buddy.
So, if these big strategic justifications are full of holes, it really makes you wonder, right? Who was this whole performance actually for? Was the intended audience in Denmark? Or was it a whole lot closer to home? And this right here is your answer. This was never about foreign policy competence. It was about performing domestic dominance. To policy experts, competence looks like detailed treaties and nuance. But to a political base, all that nuance can look like weakness. A treaty feels like asking for permission. But an offer to buy an entire country, well, that feels like taking control. The message wasn't for diplomats in Copenhagen. It was for a rally in Ohio. And then, of course, the spin started, that Denmark was to blame for overreacting. So let's just run a quick reality check here. Imagine if the Prime Minister of Denmark stood up and offered to buy Puerto Rico. Do you think the U.S. response would be calm negotiation? Of course not. It would be total outrage. So expecting an ally to just brush off a massive insult to their very sovereignty, that isn't leadership. You can't start a fire and then blame someone else for the building burning down. And that fire had a very real cost. Because it doesn't really matter if the intent was 4D chess or just an impulse, the outcome was chaos. And in the world we live in today, chaos is a weapon. And America's adversaries are more than happy to pick it up and use it against us.
And the way it worked was so simple. It fractured the alliance. You just pick a fight with Denmark, a founding member of NATO, and you create distraction and division. And who benefits from that? Russia and China do. Period. And it signals this bigger, way more dangerous shift, away from America's role as a protector that leads through restraint, toward a new identity as a transactional predator that just takes what it wants by force.
I mean, this quote from the source material just says it all, doesn't it? True strength has to include character. Leadership is about more than just getting your way. It's about how you get your way.
This wasn't a show of power. It was a loss of dignity on the world stage.
Okay, so we've looked at all the exhibits, we've analyzed the fallout. It is time for the final summary from our audit, the official execution report card on this whole Greenland gambit. And here it is. Let's just break it right down. Was the strategic goal of securing Arctic interests a valid one? Yes, absolutely. Check. But was the method, using this kind of pressure, successful? No. Total fail, because it completely ignored the treaty that already gave the US what it needed. And the outcome? Did it contain our enemies? Nope, another failure. It actually empowered them by creating chaos in our own alliances. The final grade? Execution fail.
So what's the big takeaway from all this? It's this. You have to rigorously evaluate the source of the headlines. You've got to be critical. Just because a very compelling, logical explanation from an analyst comes along after the fact, that doesn't magically make the original action logical or smart. We have to separate the clean explanation from the messy action. The bottom line is we can and we absolutely should support American interests without throwing away the dignity of American leadership to do it.
Hey, if you found this strategic audit valuable, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more explainers that deconstruct the narratives behind the news. And let us know in the comments, what event or theory do you want us to put on the audit table next? Thanks for watching.